everybody. My name is Olivia O'Brien, and this is my History and Social Science defense for the Masters of Education program. So, this is me in the classroom. This year I had 2 different student teaching experiences. I started in fall 2017 with my internship, and I interned in a 6th grade U.S. history classroom. And then this spring, of spring 2018, I did my student teaching in 12th grade government between 2 different schools. And so both of these experiences were awesome, and they have prepared me to become a teacher and be a full-time teacher. But I did not start out college thinking I was going to be a teacher. Unlike some of you guys who have known you wanted to be teachers forever, this is like a newer love of mine. So I'm going to talk about my journey from being a student to a teacher throughout this presentation. So I majored in international studies and German, so I wasn't really on the path to becoming a teacher. But I have worked with kids a lot throughout my whole life, and each time in each setting I have to work with kids, I've really enjoyed it, so that kind of pushed me in the direction of becoming a teacher. So this started when I was in high school, and I coached 4th and 5th grade girls basketball, and I started when I was in 9th grade because I had played basketball up until 8th grade, and then when I was in 9th grade I decided I wanted to coach. And so I coached alongside one of my friends. We coached 4th and 5th grade girls for 4 different seasons, so I coached every year that I was in high school. And this was a really good opportunity for me because we got to teach basketball skills to these girls who just started learning how to play basketball in 4th grade, but then we also taught them like community skills and teamwork skills, so this was an awesome way to connect to younger kids. And then after high school, the summer after high school, I worked at 2 different summer camps, which furthered my love for working with children. So this is me and a group of one of my kids at the first camp I worked at, which was the All Arts, Sciences, and Technology camp. And it was a art and science-based camp, but it also taught like other values like compassion and teamwork and curiosity. And this camp was based in North Carolina, and we moved from different universities around the state. So we'd have a different group of kids stay at the dorms and like sleep at the dorms, and so we were with them all the time, and each week we would move to a different school with a new set of campers. And then also that summer I worked at a German immersion camp in Northern Virginia, and so this camp was for elementary and middle school students who went to a half German school, and so this was an opportunity for them to speak German in the summer. So we did regular like camp activities, like we were on the lake and did like campfire stuff. We stayed in cabins, but it was all done in German. So it was a really cool environment to be in. And here are my campers like dressed in some like German fairy tale gear. So it was a really fun time. And then when I came to college, I wanted to continue working with kids. So I was also a German major. So when I was a freshman, I joined the program called Teach for Jamie, which is a program that goes to local elementary schools and teaches German in an after-school German club. So I went a few times a week my freshman and sophomore year to teach German to local elementary school students. And then when I was a junior and senior, I was the co-director of the program. So here's me and the other co-director and all of our volunteers. And as co-director, I had to do lesson planning and decide like, oh, we're going to do colors this week, and like come up with a lesson, an activity, and a game for them to keep them engaged after school when they don't really want to be learning anymore. And then I also had to coordinate with like administrators and parents and volunteers. So working with Teach for Jamie kind of pushed me more in the direction of becoming a teacher because I really liked creating lessons that engage the students and working with these kids, and it was really awesome. So I thought that the classroom is somewhere that I would like to be and a career that I would want. So that led me to this program, which has been awesome. And so the first step in this program was my internship with 6th grade U.S. history, which was great. I loved working with the 6th graders. When I got there, they were doing Native Americans, and then we did early explorers and finished with colonial America. So when I first got there, I had to like get integrated into the classroom as a new student intern. So I did that through taking attendance, so I was able to get to know their names because there's a lot of students, so this helped like to get a name to a face. And then I also started doing the Do Now, which is like their warm-up. So this gave them an opportunity to see me as like the teacher and more of an authority role just for like the first few minutes of class. And then at like about the 3rd or 4th week, I started taking over the teaching responsibility from my CT. So I used all of her previous year's lesson plans, and then I was the one that was in front of the room teaching all of her lesson plans and controlling the room, keeping the students engaged, keeping good classroom management throughout. My CT was like there around, but she kind of let me take control of the room, which was a great experience for me because I was able to like experience being in front of the classroom and actually doing the teaching. I didn't have a lot of opportunities to do lesson planning, but I was able to do a lot of that in the spring, so I learned multiple sides of this. So I really enjoyed being in 6th grade, and I learned a lot from them, and they were amazing. I learned that they have really high levels of energy, and they're very excitable, and I also have really high energy levels, but they match me and even exceed me at times. So one example of this is when we went on a digital field trip to the Moss Art Center, and we were doing like AR, VR stuff. My kids were also on a field trip to the Moss Art Center that same day. So right when we were leaving our like AR, VR stuff, they were all out in the hallway, and they were so excited to see me and excited to see me like outside of class because it really freaked them out that I was like here and not like at school. So it just shows like how excitable 6th graders are, which is something I really like about them. I also learned a lot about differentiation in 6th grade because I was in fully inclusive classrooms. So we had lots of IEPs, we had 504 plans, we have a lot of ELL students. There was one class that had a lot of aides in there, so you had to work with the aides. And I really learned how to work with these students and to give them more time and like to give them matching opportunities or give them a word bank and spend more one-on-one time with these students. I also learned that they need a lot of repetition. We would learn one thing, and then it would have to be the do now the next day, and then we'd have to talk about it like throughout the next week in order for it to sink in. I also learned that they needed a lot of clarification because for a lot of these students, this is the first time learning this for like U.S. history material in 6th grade, so they need to like have a lot of clarification about it. You need to captivate them because I realized that they're not elementary school students anymore who just want to please adults and like be good. They're not yet high school students who just want to get into a good college and will try. So they're kind of in this middle ground where they don't really care as much, so you need to captivate them and engage them in the material. And then I also learned they're super honest. Like they will tell you this was a terrible lesson, like this is so boring, I hate it, or they'll be like, this is so fun. Or they'll just tell you like anything about them. So that was exciting. So I really loved working with the 6th graders. They were so great. And then I was placed with 12th graders, which is like the complete opposite, because I was like at the very beginning of a 6th grade semester to the very end of a 12th grade semester. So I was worried about these students because they were so old. Like they're 18, which is pretty old. They're taller than me, they're bigger than me. Like this is like intense, especially coming from like 11-year-olds. I was teaching between 2 schools, kind of what Jared talked about earlier. So there are 2 schools with totally different cultures, and so you have to match the lessons per the school, so I had to change a lot of my lessons based on these 2 different schools. And it was also DE government material, so like the semester class that I was teaching counted for 2 college courses, so I had to make sure that the material I was teaching them was college level material. So a lot of what I was dealing with this year was getting second semester seniors to care. Because when I showed up, most of them were already into college or had their careers picked out. They were ready to be out of there. They've been in school for 12 years. They are done. They only have like 3 months left. So I learned to get them to care by doing simulations, being active in their school, and just to care about them in general. So some of the simulations I did, when I first got there, we did a campaign project as part of our elections unit. And so in the campaign project, they were broken up into groups of 4, and one of the students was the candidate who would do the presidential debates and who would give an acceptance or concession speech at the end, and then all the other students were advisors. So all the students had to work together to create commercials and advertisements for their candidate, create logos and slogans, participate in the debate. We had a primary and caucus to narrow them down, and then it ended with an electoral college simulation where each student was assigned a state, and then they could vote for one of their classmates based on how many electoral college votes that state had. So the kids got really engaged in this. They really seemed to learn. They understood the process, and they really wanted to win at the end, so I think that made them care because they really wanted to beat their other classmates and be our class president. And the one of the kids who won wrote Mr. President like as his name for like the following month after this, so I could tell they really enjoyed it. When we moved on to the legislative unit, we did a mock Congress, and so all the kids had to write bills, and then I split up the class, and we had half the class as the Senate and half the class as the House of Representatives, and they each had a different color marker, and they would go through and try to pass their bills, but each house could amend the bills if they wanted, they could cross stuff out or add stuff that they liked, and then it would have to go to the other house, and they'd have to pass it in the other house. And eventually it came to me as the president, and I could either sign it or veto it, and they could override my veto. And then another one was a mock trial that we did. This is when I was phasing out, and my teacher and I were co-teaching, so this is a lesson she's done before, where we did a mock trial in our judicial branch unit, and each of the kids were assigned a court case, and each court case had a prosecution side and a defense side. And so we assigned groups based on who worked well together, and we gave different like witness statements that were shorter to kids who could handle like a shorter witness statement, and witness statements that were longer to kids who could do like a longer witness statement. But they also got really engaged in this because they also wanted to win and beat the other side. So I think this simulations work really well with government because it's really easy to do a simulation of government. So another thing is to be involved in the school. My CT is really involved in one of her schools, which means that I could also be really involved in one of her schools. And she was the history coach for MAC, which is kind of like Scholastic Bowl. It's the Mountain Academic Competition Conference. And so each team, or each school has like a history team, an English team, a math team, a science team, and an all-around team, which is like all the subjects combined. So it was really great because my CT was the history coach, which means that I got to run math practice sometimes when she was planning, like at the beginning of the semester, or when she had meetings, I ran practice, and we had practice 3 times a week. And I was also able to participate in their tournament because the tournament was at our school this year, so all 10 schools in the area that participated in MAC came to our school. So this tournament was like 5 hours after school one day, and it was awesome. I was nominated to be a judge because I was a student teacher, so they told me to do that, but it was great. I judged in the semifinal round. I judged history, English, and all around, which was so much fun. As a judge, I basically just okayed answers. And then I also judged in the final round. There's me at the judges table. And basically for each section, the 2 schools that had done the best in that round were in the finals, and they just go head to head. So this was a great way to get more involved in the school. I got to meet other teachers and students from other schools in the area, and I got to see my students in action doing what they love to do. So it was really great to see them outside of school in this situation. My teacher is also the SGA head, so we got to plan a spirit week. We got to plan Beautification Day, which was rained out and snowed out, but originally it was planned for April 7th, which was also the day of Virginia Tech's big event, so it was my job to coordinate with the big event people from Virginia Tech to get students to come out and help with Beautification Day. Unfortunately, it was snowed out that day, and then it was rescheduled to last weekend, and then it was rained out again, but it will be happening next year. I also got to be involved in an outdoor classroom, which is a new idea that the school is developing. So I got to go to meetings with the principal and to meetings with county grant writers in order to create an outdoor classroom possible. So this was awesome because we had meetings for SGA every Thursday during lunch. So I got to see kids from all different grades in the school and see what they were doing and get to know them as well. And then lastly, to get second semester seniors to care is to care about them. So to show that you care about them, I formatted lessons that I know they will enjoy and actually learn from. So some examples of this, like Cabinet Madness. I saw during March Madness that every kid is sitting there on their phone watching the sports underneath the desk, and I was like, I know you guys love March Madness, but we also need to love the cabinet. So I developed Cabinet Madness, in which like the State Department versus Health and Human Services, and the kids had to choose which one they like better and then write a description of why they think that one's better. And then we did a class bracket where they voted on the different cabinet departments, and then they all wanted to see if like they had a perfect bracket, like to match the class bracket. So this was a way to get them to learn more about like the different departments. through something that they love, like March Madness. Then also just giving them choices and ability, like for our President's Project, I let them like create any type of medium that they wanted. So like one group did an Abraham Lincoln Twitter, because they love Twitter, they just want to be on Twitter, so they might as well make an Abraham Lincoln Twitter. Then just like creating any type of project that they want. We did a country project where they could each bring in a food from their country, which they really enjoyed and was really fun and delicious. Also just to like talk to them about things that they're interested in, like their sports, theater, prom, which is a really big deal, their pets, their siblings, basically just like getting to know them and showing that you care about them. Also college was a big one because while I was there is when they were deciding where they were going to college and just figuring out like how do I get a roommate or like what do I need for my dorm room, like all this kind of stuff. So it was great to talk to them about college. And then taking them on field trips, which was the greatest thing I did during my student teaching. But this is mostly my CTs doing. But we got to go on 2 field trips to Richmond with both of our schools. And this just like, this is pictures of some of them, but it's just great to show them that you care about them and take them on field trips where they can learn outside the classroom and participate in like a mock Senate hearing in the state capitol. And so I learned throughout both of my semesters that if you care about the students, then they will care about you. And if you put forth that effort to care about them, they will put forth that effort into your class. So they will do your work, they will show up, and actually like participate. So what I learned in 12th grade is how to get them engaged, which is through simulations, that they're super independent, you do not need to handhold them like you have to do with the 6th graders. They make their own choices, so they make the choice to show up to school or not because they don't have an attendance policy. They make the choice of whether or not to do their makeup work. Most of these kids want to do well because it is a DE class, they do get college credit, so they do try. The balance between present and future, and what I mean by that is like, I want them to pass this government class right now and learn what they need to know now, but I also want them to be prepared for their future as citizens. They'll all be able to vote in November, so I want them to understand our government system and like the political structure of the US. And I also want to prepare them for college through like public speaking and like critical thinking and things along those lines. And then I also learned that they are young at heart because even though they're 18 and bigger than me, they still act really young and they still act like the 6th graders a lot. And they're very immature sometimes. So my future classroom will be inclusive, friendly, and supportive. And in conclusion, this journey has lasted a long time from me becoming a student to becoming a teacher. It started with coaching basketball and being a camp counselor and teaching German here at elementary schools. It continued on to student teaching with 6th graders and 12th graders. And it also continued with all of the awesome courses I got to take here with all of you guys and all of the learning that I did. So it has been an awesome journey, and through all of these experiences, I am ready to become either a middle or high school teacher. Thank you.
Could you jump into the portfolio?
Yes.
Portfolio, please? And tell us how to read yours, and then take us through.
All right, so this is my portfolio. It basically looks like everybody else. This is my welcome page, which has like my resume. It has both of our teaching demonstrations from the fall semester and the spring semester. It has my resume. It will have this video and it has this slideshow presentation on there. And then I have like the subheadings for each category, like the learner and learning. And then I go through and have my different in tasks throughout. I would say my weakest in task is maybe learning differences, just because I saw a lot of learning differences in the fall semester, but not that many in the spring. Like in my spring semester classes, I had 0 IEPs, which is super weird. So I wasn't able to like differentiate as much as I could throughout 6th grade. But I did like give them a lot of choice, like for the campaign project, they ranked who they'd rather be, like the candidate or not like the candidate. Like I gave them like creative assignments, like for their campaign they created videos, so this gave them choice and opportunities. This is like differentiation and universal design that we did for one of our modules this year. And then I would say my strongest is probably application of content and relating the content back to the students. So this is from our First Amendment unit where they did like freedom of like speech, freedom of religion, etc. This one is freedom of assembly where they created a rally and they created like a protest or a rally to do, and then they also wrote a letter to a local representative, which was really cool, which is like freedom of petition because they all signed it. Then we did like student right court cases because these kids are students, so I wanted to like relate specific court cases back to them. So they each were assigned a court case, and they would get the court case, and then they would have to write a pro side or a con side, like either is it a violation of your freedom of speech or is it not. So they did a gallery walk where they read everybody else's. And then I also talked about a student rights case about the Confederate flag, which was an issue at one of the schools I taught at, so I could relate it back to the students. And they handled this really well, because it's controversial because this happened at this high school a few years ago, and these are seniors, so they were there when they were putting Confederate flags in their cars in the parking lot, and the school was like, no, the kids were like, we want to do this. And then I showed them their exact dress code, and we talked about what they are allowed to wear and what they're not allowed to wear. And we compared this to a real-life court case, so I could show them how that their students' rights are related in real life to these real court cases and stuff that happens at their own school. And yes, so that is my portfolio.
Thank you.
Thank
very much.
you.